Welcome to Mountain Strong. Today I am in Juneau, Alaska. This is actually my last day in Juneau. Tomorrow my family and I will be flying back to Anchorage. But for this last video I thought I'd go ahead and drive north and just see what took my interest. And I happened to notice that out of the left-hand side of the vehicle, the west side, I saw this really open beach area. And this place is called Eagle Beach, and it really is a pretty cool place. I pulled up the car and I said, I'm going to walk to the water. Well, I ended up walking probably close to a half a mile, maybe even a 3/4 of a mile. It was a long way to get to the edge of the water. And I saw some migratory birds that were there, and I thought that this would make a great spot to make a video. But then I noticed I'd been walking along the beach for all that time and walking out from land. Finally got to the edge, and I noticed the water starting to slowly come back. I don't know how quickly that water is going to come back, but I decided that maybe that wasn't the best place to shoot my Mountain Strong video. Alaska is known for her dramatic tides, and so I thought I'll just go ahead and get a little bit closer to shore. And for cinematography's sake, I probably chose the better shot anyway. I noticed looking back that there was this beautiful reflecting water here and then some mountains in the background. Today we're going to be having a look together at Psalm 56. Let's go ahead and read that now. Be gracious to me, O God, for man tramples on me. All day long an attacker oppresses me. My enemies trample on me all day long, for many attack me proudly. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? All day long they injure my cause. All their thoughts are against me for evil. They stir up strife, they lurk, they watch my steps, as they have waited for my life. For their crime will they escape? In wrath cast down the peoples, O God. You have kept count of my tossings. Put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? Then my enemies will turn back in the day when I call. This I know, that God is for me. In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me? I must perform my vows to you, O God. I will render thank offerings to you. For you have delivered my soul from death, yes, my feet from falling, that I may walk before God in the light of life. For whatever reason, this psalm actually reminded me of a Paul Simon song where he said he met a man in New York City they called the human trampoline. He chose to take that image instead of having the idea of someone jumping on someone over and over and over again, of the turning and twisting nature of life. In other words, being the person who jumped on the trampoline. Well, the idea of being trampled upon is pretty graphic. We have similar phrases in our common usage, to be trod upon, to be walked upon, he walked all over me, and so on. It's not fun to be walked upon, whether metaphorically or physically. I was actually in church the other day, and little Ezekiel, my son, he got up and for whatever reason decided he was going to stand on my foot during the time when we were all standing and singing, and I couldn't take too much of that. It actually wasn't very nice. Even his little weight on my foot wasn't very pleasant, and to imagine being trampled upon is truly a difficult thing to imagine, and would be a painful thing to experience. The psalmist feels as though he's trampled upon. How does that manifest itself? Well, he says in verse 5 that his cause is actually injured. Anytime he tries to get anything to move forward, people are always trying to stop him. Sometimes we feel like that actually in church work, that there are people who oppose us whenever we try to set forth an idea. They don't really have any strong feelings until someone sets forth an idea, and then immediately they are against it. Well, that gets old after a while. It can be very discouraging. The cause of the psalmist was injured. He was plotted against. People were talking about him behind his back. There was strife. In fact, people were stirring up struggles where they were not necessary. And once again, he says, they're plotting against me. They're waiting for my life. They're lurking around. And I love the fact that in verse 7, he realizes the answer to that question, not when God's brought into the picture. Men will trample upon us, and when we glory in men, when we seek approval from men, when we seek to please men, when we try to be on the side of men, we will find that we will never be able to please all people all the time. But when we seek to please God, even when people trample upon us, we have a strong and mighty defender, and the psalmist realized that. And as he reflects upon this, he says, I will trust in God. And because I trust in God, he says, I will not be afraid. You see that phrase being repeated throughout the psalm. I trust in God. I will not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? What can man do to me? And the answer, of course, to those things is nothing. When I am on the side of God, they can trample on me, but they will never trample upon my God. And God will deliver me from their feet and from their plans against me. Now, why can we trust in God? Why can we have such dependence upon God? Because it says in verse 8, He cares. I really love this picture in verse 8. He says, "You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book?" Two pictures there of God. He's pictured there as writing down every time the psalmist is tossing and turning because of the struggles that have been placed upon him by people who have been treating him unfairly. And then when he cries those tears, God is pictured there as holding a bottle beneath his eye to catch hold of that, to make sure that not one of those tears goes unnoticed. God is a God who truly cares. And I can't think of a more compassionate image than this one. He cares for us. But that's not the only reason that He is trustworthy. He cares for us, but number two, His word is true. Notice how in verses 10 and 11, "In God whose word I praise, in the Lord whose word I praise, in that God I trust." God has revealed Himself through His word, and His word is faithful and dependable. And because the record is dependable, the God who gave the record, the God who issued the testimony, that God can be trusted. But number three, the reason that God can be trusted is because He is for me. In verse 9, "Then my enemies will turn back in the day when I call. This I know, that God is for me." So God cares about me. His word is reliable, and He is for me. They may all be against me. They may be trampling upon me, but God is for me. And I love how when he brings this problem to God, when he commits his soul in trust to God, I love how once again he can see the solution through faith. And he says in verses 12 and 13 that he is going to give thanks to God. He says, "I must perform my vows to you. I will render thank offerings to you." He knows that he has been delivered. He knows that God is on his side. And he knows that he will not be the human trampoline. People will not always be trampling upon him, bouncing upon him. He knows that wrongs will be righted, injustices will be made just again, and that God will show himself to be faithful. In God we trust, and therefore we will always be secure. Trust in God today, and may He bless you today.